Welcome to Percussion Methods. Today we're talking about timpani. I almost always recommend that performers sit on a timpani throne as they play. That way it's easier to access the pedals for quick tuning changes. A good timpani throne should be height adjustable and heavy duty. You'll know you have the height of your throne set correctly when you sit up nice and tall, and you can set a mallet on the head comfortably with a nice flat angle of attack without having your shoulders really high or really low and not hunching. If your throne is set too high, you'll get a steep angle of attack and you won't be transferring all the power from the stroke into the head. If your throne is too low, you're either gonna need to raise up your shoulders or your elbows, or you're gonna get accidental rim shots where the shaft of the mallet is actually hitting the top of the bowl. It's not good for the head or for your mallets, and it also sounds bad. Set up the drums in an arc shape with the pedals pointed inward. You should be able to swivel on the throne and reach all of the pedals very, very easily. You should also be able to hold your mallets in a relaxed position in front of you and swivel and get above the playing zones of all four drums without needing to reach very far out or pull very far back. The drums should be set up as close together as possible without touching one another. Once you have all the drums in place, make sure to lock the wheels so that they don't roll away from you as you're using the pedal. And just a reminder, we identified the drums by the diameter of each of them. So the largest one in a standard set of 4 is the 32-inch drum. Next we have a 29-inch drum, 26-inch drum, then finally a 23-inch drum. So the largest one is 32 and it decreases by 3 inches in diameter for each drum. A few basic technique reminders. We usually use French grip on this instrument because it gives you really good mobility around your torso as you're playing fast passages on different drums. French grip also makes it more easy to play on the lower or highest drum if you still need your feet pointed forward if, say, you're doing pedal changes on the middle 2 drums. The proper playing zone for each drum is about 1/3 of the way from the rim to the center. Whenever we need to raise the pitch of a drum, we go toe down on the pedal. Whenever we need to lower the pitch, we go heel down on the pedal. Let's talk about tuning methods on timpani. This instrument has notoriously prominent overtones, so hearing the fundamental pitch of any drum can be a little bit challenging. When you're matching a reference pitch, whether that's from a pitch pipe, from a tuning fork, or a pitch you're getting from the ensemble or some other instrument, I recommend putting your ear very, very close to the head and using a medium soft mallet to do your tuning. This makes it easier to hear the fundamental pitch. Whenever you're tuning, start below the note and bring the pitch up. That way the head is always being brought over the bowl. If you start higher and try and bring the pitch down, not all of that membrane always gets pulled over the bowl and your pitch will go flat pretty quickly. It's also just easier to hear pitches that are ascending when you're trying to match a reference note. I don't look at the gauges when I'm tuning by ear like this because if the letter isn't quite in the right place, that visual might actually bias my tuning process. I'm going to be tuning this 29-inch drum to a B flat. So here's my reference pitch from a pitch pipe. So ear low over the playing zone, tapping nice and softly with a soft mallet. I want to check it at more of a mezzo piano dynamic. To me, this sounds like I overshot the note a little bit and it's a bit sharp. So I'm going to bring the pitch back down and repeat that tuning process close to the head. That seems a bit closer. I've repeated that tuning process for all 4 drums to get the pitches I need for the example that's on screen. You'll notice in the top right corner of this, I have a tuning diagram. The bottom left corner is our lowest drum, and the bottom right corner follows the arc around to our highest drum. This excerpt explores a few timpani-specific techniques. The first of which is muting. We can selectively mute drums that are ringing if we're going from a loud dynamic to a soft dynamic. That way the resonance of the loud playing doesn't wash out the intricacy of the soft playing. Or when we simply just need more clarity between the drums, especially when pitches are close together. You'll notice in this there are small X's indicated where I'm going to be dampening the ring from the prior drum. So in the first measure, I start out by playing a B flat, then I go up to a C. Now those pitches are fairly close together, they're only a major second apart, so that can sound a bit muddy, especially in the low range that timpani occupy. So as I play the note C, I'm going to mute the B flat. Timpani muting is actually pretty simple. We're going to leave our thumb and index finger on the stick. This makes up our fulcrum in either German grip or French grip. And then with my back 3 fingers, I'm just going to touch lightly in the playing zone of the ringing drum. You don't need to pet the head and actually do any kind of sideways motion on it. It's just a gentle press right in the playing zone. Here's what that looks like. I'm going to play this right-handed on the 26-inch drum. Those back 3 fingers just touch gently right in the playing zone, and the sound disappears pretty quickly. After you play your stroke in French grip, you're going to bring the stick up and then turn the hand over to put the back 3 fingers on and mute the drum. So the first 2 beats of this excerpt look a little bit like this. Looking at the third measure, you see a little X on the F that was ringing before. I'm going from a loud forte dynamic to a soft piano dynamic, so I don't want that resonance of that F ringing through and muddying up the first 2 notes of the soft playing. So as I go to play that first B flat piano note in the third measure, I'm going to reach out and mute the high F. Our last muting example is in measure 5. We have a C and a B flat very close together. I'm going to use my right hand to very quickly dampen that note C as I play the B flat 8th note that follows. I'll play through this whole excerpt so you can see the muting technique in action. You'll notice at the end of the excerpt over the quarter rest is a crosshair symbol. Composers will sometimes use this to indicate you should dampen everything that's ringing. So I'll start with dampening the B flat since that's what I played most recently and has the most prominent ring, and then I'll reach out to dampen the other drums. To execute that Forte-Piano Hollywood roll effect on timpani, you're going to strike the drum and then wait for a second. Allow for some of the resonance to go away, and then start your roll really soft and light, and then bring up the height. Waiting after that initial stroke gives a more dramatic shape to the dynamic envelope. You can check out my video on French grip to learn more about the mechanics of playing single strokes on timpani, but I want to dig into rolls. On timpani, we're going to be playing single stroke rolls, not buzz rolls, because pressing into the head wouldn't allow this naturally ringy instrument to resonate. With my good French grip set up, I'm going to separate my hands slightly and come back toward the rim a little bit. This is simply a more resonant, ringy part of the drum, which helps give my rolls that illusion of sustain. You only need to roll as fast as it takes to generate a sustained sound. If you roll too quickly like this, it makes the tone quite tense. Now that tense emotional aspect to the sound of your roll may or may not be appropriate for the music you're working on. If you roll too slowly, you're going to hear the individual strokes in the roll, and it's not going to give you that illusion of sustain. Here's a roll that's going too slowly. Much like with mallet instruments, when you hit the right roll speed, the instrument will glow slightly, and no, it's not actually going to light up, but the resonance will start to propagate itself, and the roll sound will start to smooth out. To demonstrate this with hard mallets, on the 29-inch drum, these are roughly 32nd notes at about 60 beats per minute, or you could think of them as 16th notes at 120 beats per minute. Again, I usually wouldn't use such hard mallets to generate this kind of roll sound, but you can really hear the individual strokes a bit more clearly and the roll speed this way. Now with some softer mallets, with my grip spread out, a little closer to the rim, rolling at the same speed, I get a pretty nice sustained sound. Also keep in mind that your roll speed should be detached from the tempo. That is, you shouldn't be rolling in a specific rhythm. If you do roll in a specific rhythm, say 16th notes, sextuplets, or 32nd notes, it doesn't give your roll that illusion of sustain. You should set your hands at a certain speed that makes the drum glow, and then separate it from the tempo entirely. It's a little bit tricky to do, but you can see demonstrations of this in my 2 mallet tips video. When I'm playing soft rolls like mezzo piano and softer, in my French grip, I roll my fingers a little bit. This just promotes fluidity and a nice relaxed grip. Because of the large lateral distance between the playing zones of the drums, especially for the larger two, it can be tricky to connect your rolls together. But having abutting rolls is really essential for getting a nice lyrical sound. An exercise like this one can help work on that. We're going to lead with our right hand as the pitches go up, and of course lead with our left hand as the pitches go down. Sometimes I'll see timpanists try and start all of the rolls with their right hand, even ones that descend, and just like on mallets, it doesn't make a whole lot of intuitive sense. As we're going from the 32-inch drum to the 29-inch drum, there's going to be a freeze frame where my right hand is moving to the right as my left hand is finishing up playing its last stroke. This will help eliminate any break between the rolls so they abut to one another. This technique becomes a little bit more apparent in measures 4 and 5 when you're leaping from the 32-inch drum all the way up to the 26-inch drum. That freeze frame moment where the mallets are separated is going to become exaggerated. Then, going from measure 5 to measure 6, we're going all the way from the 23-inch drum down to the 32-inch drum. So there's going to be a second where my mallets are actually very far apart from each other to get that roll connected. As you're doing an exercise like this, try not to have any interruption in your roll speed. It's a quick motion from side to side, but we're not going to add any additional velocity or force to the stroke. This will help ensure that we don't have spiky rolls, that is, there's not an accent at the beginning or the exit of the roll. My 2 mallet tips video has some suggestions on how to avoid playing spiky rolls. Here's what this exercise sounds like. Probably noticing, especially at the end, I'm using French grip to get around and rotate around my torso to have a really fast lateral motion from the 32-inch drum all the way up to the 23. An important concept to getting a full and even tone across the 4 different drums on timpani is something I call drum balancing. The larger drums need more force than the higher drums to sound like they're at the same dynamic level. So I tell my students, if you're playing the 23-inch drum at 100% volume level, you need to play the 26 at 105% volume, the 29 at 110% volume, and the 32-inch drum at 115% volume. Those higher frequency drums simply sound louder at a short distance than the lower ones do, hence why we give the bigger drums more force when we play. You don't need a lot. That little 5% increase can help get you a really nice full tone across all 4 drums. Sticking on timpani is generally straightforward, and we can follow some of the same rules as when we determine stickings on keyboard percussion. As the notes get higher, we tend to lead with our right hand. As they get lower, we tend to lead with our left hand. If you have a few notes in a row on the same drum, you can play those all with your right hand or left hand, whichever one is more comfortable and consistent for you. That'll just give you a more even sound. However, there are situations, especially in fast passages, where you might need to do something a bit more creative with your sticking. Either a doubling, skipping from one drum to the next, a doubling on the same drum, or even a crossover. Take a look at the first measure of the example on screen. I need to do some doubling in this example because if I try and alternate the entire thing, that's going to result in really excessive crossovers. I don't prefer to play crossovers because they're going to change the angle of attack on your mallets, and you can't have a mid-air collision. The sticking on top is the one that I would use if I need to play this very softly and very quickly. It's got doublings happening on the same pitches. Doublings aren't ideal, but when the music is moving this quickly, trying to alternate this is gonna just tangle your hands up. Here's what that top sticking looks like. When you see that crosshair symbol, that means to dampen all the pitches as quickly as you can, starting with the ones that are ringing the most, so the ones that you most recently played. The lower sticking is an alternative that uses some doubles bouncing between the highest 2 drums and the lowest 2 drums. Usually when I need to play doubles on timpani, I prefer to do that on either the highest 2 or the lowest 2, simply because I have my hands in front of me to play alternating patterns on the middle 2. I'm going to alter my normal playing position slightly on the upper 2 drums when I play the double to go for the playing zones that are closest to one another on the drums, as opposed to the normal ones I would use here and way out here. Same thing with the doubling in the left hand on the lowest 2 drums. I'm going to aim for the playing zones that are closest together. Here's what that lower option sticking sounds like. Executing a tuning change as you're playing can be daunting, but if you plan out all the steps of the change and write them into your music, it can make it a lot less intimidating. This example is most similar to the first one we saw. You're going to notice some dampening to assist with clarity in the pitches, but I need to change my low F on the 32-inch drum up to an A flat by the 4th measure. To make that easier throughout this excerpt, I'm going to keep my left foot on the pedal of the 32-inch drum, but not apply any pressure to the toe until about the 4th beat of the 2nd measure. You can see the smaller note head F in parentheses around beat 4. I'm going to start my tuning change there, go toe down until I hit G on beat 1 of measure 3, and then I'm going to slow down as I approach my target note, landing at A flat around beat 3 of the 3rd measure. Throughout that tuning change, I'm going to keep my eye on the needle of the gauge until it reaches A flat. Then in measure 4, I finally connect my roll downward to the new note. I'm going to airplay this and narrate the tuning change as an illustration of how it fits in with the music. So I have my left foot on the lowest pedal, because that's the one I need to change, above my 2 starting notes. Roll, look, move up to G, to A flat, connect down to A flat. You might notice the final A flat has a little half slur symbol on it. Composers will often use this sign to indicate let the note ring. Lower down on the page, you can see how using a pedal diagram can help remind you of the pitches you need if you're jumping around to different places in a piece during a rehearsal. So at rehearsal letter A, that's what you need to set the drums to, and the E flat has been circled because in context, that's the note that I would need to change for music that is upcoming. These tuning diagrams are nice because they're easy to draw into your music, and they very efficiently show you all 4 pitches that you need. Mallet selection has a big influence on timpani tone. We generally use something harder for intricate passages and something softer for more legato work. A hard mallet is not necessarily louder than a softer mallet, it just has more articulation. I'm going to play a simple short passage starting with soft mallets and then working my way up harder and harder implements. Next up, these are some general hardness mallets. These are some hard mallets. These are some very hard mallets. Finally, these are some wooden mallets, and I've put a little bit of soft cotton tape on them to get rid of some of the contact sound. Select timpani mallets based on the rhythmic intricacy of the music you're working on. These 2 mallets are obviously very different hardnesses. They both have bamboo shafts, but important to note, they have different felt stitching patterns. This one uses a parachute stitching technique where the felt is pulled over the mallet head and then stitched at the top of the mallet shaft. This means that there's no seams or bumps to worry about. You can hold it in any rotation you want. This, on the other hand, is a cartwheel style mallet. The felt is actually applied in a strip, and there's a little black dot where the seam is. You want to avoid playing on that seam because it can give you an inconsistent sound. There's no advantage to having, say, a parachute mallet or a cartwheel style mallet. It all depends on the feel and sound you like. In rehearsals and performances, there are a few different ways you can approach tuning your timpani. One method is to check out a chromatic pitch pipe like this one to your percussion section leader. Before rehearsals and performances, they're going to use this to set the gauges, and the other percussionists will simply tune by looking at the gauges. However, that doesn't necessarily encourage good ear training for your entire section. So you could have all of your percussionists get these. That's a possibility, and that reduces germ spread since you do put your mouth on this to get it to sound. Or you could have all of your percussionists get a tuning fork like this one. This is tuned to A440, and the nice thing about it is it's very stealthy. I can hear it right now, but I'm guessing you can't on the video. These are great if you need to tune in the middle of a piece because you can't use this because then you're going to get a harmonica solo in the middle of a beautiful ballad. However, this only makes one note, A440, so those percussionists need to know their intervals and work from that note A to get the pitch they need. Electronic tuners can pick up the pitch of timpani and assist with tuning, but then your students aren't working on their ear training as much. And also, the room has to be very, very quiet in order for those to work. Usually before a rehearsal or a performance, I'll use my pitch pipe to get the gauges set, and then if I need to make a tricky tuning change mid-piece, I'll use a pitchfork. That way I can hold it up to my ear and no one else hears it. An even better method for tuning mid-piece is if you can study the score and determine if an instrument is playing the note you need. Say, trombones play a B flat and I need to tune to a B flat, I'll make a note of where that occurs in my music and use that as my reference pitch. Sometimes percussionists will think that the gauges are always going to be correct, but it's very easy to move those letters around, and if the heads stretch out or the weather is changing drastically, it can mean that the gauge might not actually be that close. So it's always good to check them before every rehearsal and performance. Ideally, all of your percussionists would have one of these pitch pipes checked out to them. That way, before and during rehearsals, they can continually check their pitches and get them dialed in. It's not often that we need to apply dampening to our timpani, but if you have really, really fast, choppy playing, adding a little bit of MoonGel can help dry out the sound and give you more definition to the rhythm. I'll usually put a square of this across from the playing zone, very, very close to the rim. If one piece of MoonGel is too much, you can actually take scissors and cut it in half if you need slightly less dampening. Whenever your timpani aren't being played, it's always best to cover them. These heads are pretty thin and they can be under a lot of tension, so if something is placed on top of them, it is possible they could be punctured. Whenever you're moving your timpani, do not move it by the rim. This rim needs to be centered on top of the bowl or the head will sound really, really out of tune with itself. You need to recenter it and clear it then. When you're moving the drums, always use the legs or the struts. This is a very, very stable contact point that's not going to knock the head out of tune. You should move your timpani at high tension, that is toe down. That added tension makes it less likely that the rim will get knocked off center if you, say, bump into a doorway. Just like with keyboard instruments, grabbing from the legs, lift them over bumps, especially things like door thresholds. Once your timpani have reached their storage destination, do not store them at high tension. I like to store my drums about 1/3 of the way from the bottom on the gauge. If you store them all the time at high tension, it's going to cause the head and the spring to stretch and wear out quickly. As usual, we're storing our mallets and other instruments on a music stand with a black towel on it. That way we can pick them up and put them down without making extraneous noise. We can also position the stand wherever we need it for fast mallet changes. When you're storing your timpani mallets, you can keep the felt safe by not touching it with your hands because the oils from your skin will cause the felt to deteriorate, and put them in a sandwich baggie like this, give it a twist, and then these are safe to go in your mallet bag. If you don't have the plastic around them, other sticks that have little nicks and splinters in them will pick your timpani mallets apart really quickly, and then you gotta throw them away.